The news conference was held jointly by the Taoiseach and the British Prime Minister to prevent any repetition of the furore which followed Mrs Thatcher's out dismissal of nationalist aspirations after the last summit at Chequers. Today, Mrs Thatcher said this agreement would benefit all the people of the North and that she saw it as a positive incentive to devolve government. Both leaders sought to reassure Unionists.
With regard to the Unionist population, I think and I hope I've made it clear. It is clear in the agreement that is set out here in a binding way that Irish political unity would come about only with the consent of a majority. And that ought to be a reassurance, just as the recognition of and the maintenance of the aspiration to unity and the commitment of both governments, including the British government, to the introduction and support of legislation for Irish unity if a majority in its favour emerges, should be a reassurance to everybody of the nationalist tradition in this island.
You asked especially what was in it for the Unionists, and I would like to respond to your question. First, the assurance of no change in the status of Northern Ireland without their consent. And secondly, this is the first time the legitimacy of the Unionist position has been recognised by the Republic in a formal international agreement. Third, increased cooperation with the South on security and other matters. Fourth, support for devolution from both governments. And as that becomes more and more effective, so the Intergovernmental Conference becomes less and less significant, and the peoples of Northern Ireland together make the decisions about their future. And fourth, you will have noticed that in the communiqué, it is the intention of the Republic to accede to the European Convention on Suppression of Terrorism. That matter has, of course, to go before their Dáil. So there is a great deal in it, in addition to the hope of breaking the violence and therefore living lives in peace and stability, which is perhaps the most important thing of all.
Dr FitzGerald endorsed Mrs Thatcher's belief in the agreement as a stepping stone to devolve powers in the North. So was the agreement aimed at providing an internal settlement?
It is certainly aimed at, and it would be part of our objective, to encourage the development of devolved government in which both sides would participate. It also, on the one hand, assures Unionists that Irish political unity would not be brought about save with the consent of majority in Northern Ireland. On the other hand, assures nationalists that if that consent is there, the British government, our government, would introduce and support the necessary legislation. I think it's the case that there have always been Irish nationalists who have felt that Britain had an interest in Northern Ireland that transcended the question of the views and wishes of the people there, and that even if a majority in Northern Ireland wished to be part of the United Kingdom, to join United Ireland, that Britain might have a continuing interest and might wish to hang on to Northern Ireland in those circumstances. The agreement makes it clear that Britain has no such interest.
The Taoiseach was asked would he be taking steps to rescind the constitutional claim to the North.
The agreement, as I said earlier, recognises also on the part of the British as well as Irish government the legitimacy of the aspiration to Irish unity in a sovereign Irish state that is clearly set out there. On the point about the Constitution, there is no proposal to change our Constitution, and that is not something that arises from this agreement, which is being undertaken within the framework of our existing constitutional situation, but in good faith and looking to the future with the objectives of securing peace and stability in Northern Ireland.